Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Hope all of you are doing really well today. The topic for today's session is property validate method. As one of you have requested me to make detailed video on property validate, OBJ validate and page validate. So what I thought is let me create a detailed video on each of these. Okay, so this session is specifically going to explain what is a property validate method and how to use it. Okay, so let's get started. So I'll try to log into the application. Let me switch to the Dev Studio for doing the configurations. Okay, so let me run the case and let me explain what the use case we are planning to build in today's session. So I'll create the case, which is our training case. So first thing is, we will be asking the user, are you a new user? If yes, then we will be giving a form to this particular user who has created the case to fill in his or her details and move forward. So if you see this screen, as of now, I don't have any validations added. And if I don't enter any values in these fields and if I hit submit, right? So the system will allow me to proceed to the next screen. So let me do that for you. So I'll hit the submit button. So you see, it takes me to the next particular screen in the flow. So what we are planning to do is we will be adding validations. So as soon as you select this checkbox and you see this form, right? We need to add validations over here to check if the values that the user enter in these fields, right? That meets certain requirements. So this particular use case we will be implementing with the help of property validate method. So first of all, let me try to explain, let me try to define what exactly is a property validate method in Pega. Okay, so property validate method is basically a method in activity that we use to ensure that the property value meets certain requirements. So this requirement can be something that is defined by the business. Okay, it can be like, for example, let's do something like the user should not be able to enter numbers in this field because it is a text only field, right? It's a name. So name cannot be a number. So it should be only uppercase or lowercase alphabets or letters. So if we have such requirement, okay, for example, let's try to build this particular use case only wherein we will be checking if the user um, is entering only alphabets in this field, name field. Okay, for now, if I just enter numbers and if I hit submit, right, you see there is no validation. But after we build this use case, we should not be allowing user to enter number in the name field. Okay, it should be only alphabets. It can be uppercase, lowercase. Okay, so how do we do that? So first thing is, let us try to open the selection or the section that is calling this particular UI. So we'll do a live UI and okay, this is our section, enter students details. So there is also possibility to add validations on the field itself, required, not required, but that is not the topic for today's session. So let us try to open the flow action rule that gets called. So I know the flow action name is also enter students details. So let's open this flow action. So in this flow action, right, we need to do the validation on submit of this UI. So if you have to do it on submit of a screen, so like I told in my previous session, we'll be adding our code in the post processing of the flow action rule. So the flow action that gets called is this, and let us add our validation in the post processing activity. So as of now, we already have an activity to save the data, the student data to the data type. We will be enhancing this to add our validation code. Okay, so let me open this activity. So before saving the data into the data type, first we will do the validation. So the step that we are going to add is on top, the first step basically. Okay, and like I already told, the topic for today's session is property validate method. So let us include that method. So let's first understand what are the different parameters of this particular method, which is property validate. So first thing is obviously the property name. So which property you want to validate, that you have to define it in this particular autocomplete box. And if you see there is a plus icon, so it is also possible that in one single property validate method, you can have n number of properties that you would like to validate. So the first parameter is the property name, like which property you want this particular property validate method to consider. Okay, so obviously it's a property, so you need to give a dot and then you can select your property. Okay, and then what is this field? Validate as. So next parameter validate as basically will take a edit validate rule. So there are two possible alternatives here. If you want, you can configure, you can define the edit validate rule over here in this box, or if you leave it as blank, right? So what Pega does is Pega will go and open the property rule And on the property rule, it will try to find what is the edit validate rule defined. Okay, so let me also parallelly try to configure. So first thing is the data that you see on this screen, right? So for me, it is not on the PY work page. It is under a page called student details, which is inside the PY work page. So let me try to give the step page as PY work page dot student details, because this is where my property, all the properties that we are trying to validate, right? That is residing in this particular path. So that I will give in the step page of this method. And now let us try to add our properties. Let me quickly hit the save button once. Okay, so if you see here, I get all the properties that we see on the UI. So let me try to show you for the name property, student name property. So let's select the property name as student. Now, if you open this property, right, as of now, it does not have any edit validate rule defined on the property itself. So let me quickly show you. So where can you see the edit validate rule? You need to go to the advanced tab, and here, if you have any edit validate rule configured, right? So this you can list down over here. But as of now, I don't have any edit validate rule defined on the property. So let me, and I have not created any edit validate rules. So let us try to use some out of the box rules. So let us see if there is something called is, okay, we have boolean is integer is letter. Okay, so this is something that we will use, because like I told in the start, the requirement that I am trying to build is the field student name should contain only letters. It should not contain any numbers. Okay, so this is one out of the box edit validate rule. Let me open and show you. This is a Pega rule set. So this is Pega's rule, and it's a final rule also. So what it does is it will basically, it's a Java code. It will basically check if your string contains only alphabets or characters. Okay, it should not contain any numbers. If it does, then this edit validate rule will become false. Okay, if you can go and read the description also, validate property contains letters only. This is what this particular edit validate does. So in our use case, this is a best fit. So that is what we use it. Okay, so I'll repeat again what these parameters are. So property name parameter, you will define the property which you would like to validate. Validate as in this parameter, you will give a edit validate rule. If you leave it as a blank, then Pega will go back to the property and will try to find out what is the edit validate rule. Next is this checkbox, continue checkbox. What is this? So this particular checkbox, if you leave it as blank, first let us read what it says. Okay, it is basically going to ask you, do you want to continue the processing of this activity even if this validation fails, yes or no? Okay, so if you select this as yes, so it will continue the validation. The activity processing will not stop or halt. But if you leave it as unblank, right? So as soon as one of the edit validate fails, like this one, if it fails, then it will not process the further steps. That is what this checkbox is. Okay. I will show this practically just a couple of while later. Once I explain this, right, then I will be showing this in practical also about this checkbox. Okay. The next parameter that you see over here is the default parameter. So default parameter is basically a text input wherein you can enter the default value of the property. So if your property is not having any value, right, then this value, whatever you define here, that will be considered. So this is the default parameter. Next thing is the required parameter. So if you select this as true, so it is, Pega will impose that this property student name always needs to be a non-blank value. Like it should contain a value. If you select this as required and if you don't enter the value on UI, right, so there will be a standard message that Pega will throw, like this property cannot be blank. Okay, so that also I'll show you just shortly. And then there is an error message. So this basically will give us an option to enter what message you want to show to the user when your validation fails. Okay, so let us give a message, right, like please enter only letters. Okay, this is the validation. So let me save this and let us quickly go and test out. Okay, so I will repeat again what we have done. So we are calling a property validate method on the student's detail page where our properties are. And we are doing a validation on the student name property to check if it is only letter. Okay, and if it fails, then this is the message that we want to show to the user. So let's try to test this out. Okay, so let me refresh it. Let's perform the assignment. So let me first try to enter some numbers and hit the submit button. Okay, so the validate rule, the property validate rule successfully fires, and it says please enter only letters. So this is the message that I defined in the property validate method. Now I also wanted to show you something with respect to the one second. Yeah, with respect to this required checkbox. So if you mark this as true, and in the UI, if you don't enter any value for this property student name, right? So there will be default message that Pega shows. So let me show you that also. Let me refresh it. Okay. And I will not enter anything in this field. It is marked as a required field, but I do not enter any value and I hit submit. Okay, so you see this field may not be blank. So this message is something that is coming from backend. Okay, and this is how your required checkbox works. This checkbox. Okay, now let me show you what is this continue checkbox. So for that, let me first add another property validation over here itself. So let's do validation on student location. Same validation. I don't want the user to enter any numbers in the student location field. Okay, I want only alphabets to be entered. And let's give the same message over here for this field. Okay, FEI. Okay, so this is what is my second validation. Now, the next thing that I'm going to show you is how this continue checkbox works. Okay, so first I have not selected the continue. That means I want the processing to stop once once the first one fails. Okay, so this is not selected. So let's see the behavior now. Let me refresh it. Come back to the assignment. Okay, so I will enter numbers in both these fields. Okay, and I'll hit submit. So if you see only one validation, the first validation, which is the student name validation, fires. Okay, and the other one is not firing. Okay, now if you go back and if you select this continue checkbox as true, that means I want to continue the validation on other fields irrespective of what is the outcome of the first validation. Okay, so I'll do a continue true. And then let's go back and refresh and see the behavior. Okay, again, I'll be entering just some numbers and submit. Okay, now you can see very clearly that both of my validations are getting triggered. Okay, so this is how your continue checkbox behave. Okay, so I think I was able to cover all of the parameters about this property validate method with example. If you still have any further questions, please feel free to post your questions in the comments. Thank you so much for watching in and stay tuned for upcoming videos. Bye.